Welcome back, everyone, to another reaction video. Well, many of you have heard me talk about the fantastic tours that I've gotten to be a part of over in Europe with some of the actors from Band of Brothers, where we toured the sites associated with Easy Company. And I've now been there for 2 tours that included visiting sites in and around Bastogne for the events of the Battle of the Bulge. And we didn't just cover the events of Band of Brothers, we also got to learn a lot about some of the other units that were involved. And I did shoot some content that eventually you'll get to see from those tours. Hasn't gone up yet. But one of the places that our fantastic tour guide, Reg Johns, took us, and Reg is a friend. He's an amazing guy he's Belgian and he knows this stuff. I mean, this is what he does for a living. And he took us to these sites and told us some incredible stories I had never heard before. And one of those stories we heard about was the attack on a field hospital that was set up in the early days of the Siege of Bastogne. And it's one of the reasons why when you watch Band of Brothers and you see that they don't have an aid station and they're really hurting for supplies, one of the reasons why is because one of the field hospitals that was set up near Bastogne was attacked by the Germans, and we went to the site where this happened. Well, along with us on that tour, one of my friends that I've gotten to know over the last year is my friend Sander, who has a great channel called Sander VK History, and it is a crime that the man does not have at least 10,000 subscribers right now, and I want to try and change that. I've been doing that a lot lately. I've been trying to shine a light on channels that I really feel just don't have the following that they deserve to have. And Sander has really upped his game lately. He's been using these animations and really just presenting these stories in a fantastic way. So we're actually going to watch his video that he made from one of the sites that we visited when we were in Bastogne, which is the site where this field hospital was attacked during the Battle of the Bulge. So join me on the journey. I'll put the link in the description below. As of this moment, Sander has 6,280 subscribers. I feel like we can get him to 8,000 in the next 24 hours, maybe more. He absolutely deserves it. If you love historic site videos, Sander's got some of the best ones out there, and he lives there, so he gets to make a lot. I personally, my favorite of his so far is his visit to a concentration camp. In fact, let me show you that video real quick. So here are some of the videos that he has done lately. This one about this couple that are documenting all the war graves of World War I for the British Empire is phenomenal. That's a great one there. His video about the sunken lane was one of the first ones that he really did kind of some new animation. It was really, really cool how he's done that. But specifically the one that I want to show you that was just out of hand good and just really blew me away is his video about the Mauthausen concentration camp. My great uncle was in the 11th Armored Division, which liberated Mauthausen. That's a great video, and I highly recommend. There's no reason that video should only have 2,600 views. It is so, so good. So please, check out Sander VK History. It is well worth your time, especially if you're interested in World War I, World War II video, on-site videos from Europe. Check those out. But we're going to go ahead and dive into his video on the attacked field hospital in Bastogne.
Okay, today we are standing at Crossroads X in the Ardennes, and if you know what happened here, then you know what horrible things men are capable of during wartime.
So Sander's Dutch, and I actually, he and I did a tour together around Oosterbeek, which is outside of Arnhem in the Netherlands. And he took me around and showed me a bunch of sites. We just kind of walked around, and we were giving each other a hard time when we were having bloopers and things like that. And, you know, it's a real challenge for him because, remember, English is not his first language. But he does such a great job with these, despite the fact that he's speaking in a language that is not his own. Somebody needs to fix that American flag. That's where it happened.
Here, on this field behind me here, the Americans set up a field hospital during the Battle of the Bulge. So when the Americans came from the front line, the wounded, they could be treated here on this field.
it's cool he included the coordinates of it.
The field hospital tents were clearly marked with a red cross on each of them, to indicate to the enemy to not attack or bomb this field. Normally, an agreement during wartime is that you don't attack medical staff or hospitals.
And I should mention that this is actually a rare event, right? I mean, it wasn't a normal thing that the Germans were regularly attacking field hospitals. There were a number of things that happened during the Battle of the Bulge on both sides that were out of the norm as far as war crimes on the Western Front. Not that the Germans didn't commit plenty of war crimes, and the Americans did as well in some cases, including at the Battle of the Bulge, but this was a rare event.
At the start of the Battle of the Bulge, already the first wounded were arriving. Guys from the 10th Armored Division, 28th Division and the first wounded of the 101st that were evacuated, retreated in these tents here on this field.
Never seen that picture.
Surgeons were working around the clock on the wounded. You could say it was like an ant farm with the jeeps and trucks full of wounded soldiers driving in and out all the time. Now, at the same time on this road was a big stream of civilian refugees, families trying to get away from Bastogne because the Germans were approaching from the opposite direction. Mostly women and children, but also a lot of men, because they didn't want to get captured by the Germans and forced to be fighting for them in the war. So coming from this road were a stream of people who were refugees coming from Bastogne, and they were towing carts with small horses in front of them going up this road. That same evening, on the same day, around 4:30 p.m, there was a German tank unit coming towards the field hospital, which belonged to the 116 Schwere Panzerabteilung. And this unit was not fighting for Bastogne, but were trying to find a way to cross the Our River. So
remember that the whole siege of Bastogne happens in the first place because this is Operation Wacht am Rhein, which was the last ditch offensive. It's sometimes known as the Ardennes Offensive, to try and break through the Allied lines, get back at the ports at Antwerp and places like that, and slow down the Allied war effort on the Western Front. And so they had certain things they had to accomplish, and this was all about surprise and speed. And along the way, there are these moments where the Germans get slowed down. We've told some of those stories before, and at some point we'll dive into that massive series that Operations Room did on the Battle of the Bulge. But things aren't going their way, and they're getting frustrated. And as they get frustrated, they start taking out that frustration on anybody they can find. And the Germans see the stream of refugees coming down that road. And one of their forward observers noticed an American field hospital sitting here on this field. So what did the Germans do? They actually stopped some refugees, took their coats, put them on, hiding their machine guns underneath the coats. And they mingled themselves with the refugees, walking towards this field hospital. The Germans then surrounded the field hospital here with a few men dressed as civilians with their machine guns and machine pistols underneath the coats, waiting for the signal to attack the field hospital. And, you know, we talk about, I mentioned earlier about war crimes. Obviously, the most famous one that people remember from the Battle of the Bulge is the Malmedy Massacre, as it's known. And we visited that site during this tour as well. Big number of American troops are killed in this field by men under Joachim Peiper. There's, of course, the Wereth 11. We visited that site as well. It was 11 African-American soldiers who were some of the few who were actually given combat roles on the Western Front during all of this. They were from a heavy field artillery unit, and they had been taken in by a Belgian family, but somebody ratted them out to the local Germans, and they were taken into a field and massacred. There's a massacre that is committed by the 11th Armored Division on German soldiers that George Patton wrote about in his diary and did his best to cover up after the war. Then, at a certain moment, they all swung their guns from underneath their coats, and they charged the field from almost every direction and started machine gunning the tents. The Americans were totally surprised by this.
One of the guys who was a medic here was Richard O'Brien, and once he heard the gunshots, he immediately lay flat down on his belly and he crawled towards the end of the tent, trying to escape this horrific scene here. Luckily for him, he manages to reach the edge of the wood. There, he meets another escaped American who is holding a gun. That American crawled out with a pistol in his hands while he was heavily wounded. He says to Richard O'Brien, "Go, take this gun. If they catch me with this gun, they are definitely going to kill me." Richard managed to get up, go escape into these woods, and then runs into an American patrol away from Bastogne, so he was safe again behind the friendly lines. Richard survived that day, but many didn't survive this attack. Only the walking wounded were taken prisoners, and the rest were executed.
And again, so why would the Germans do this when this wasn't something that, like, we don't have like thousands of stories of every time the Germans encountered a field hospital, they kill them. In this case, this is about they're moving through, right? They're not staying here. They're not moving and trying to take this area. They're trying to push through. They've got to overrun Bastogne, but they've got to overrun a lot of other places as well. And so they're not interested in taking prisoners. They're interested in making sure there are no Americans behind their lines.
So, from the very first day on, the 101st, the 10th Armored and the 28th Division lost most of their medical staff. They were now almost out of surgeons, dentists and nurses.
And you're going to be surrounded without any of those things. The air cover is not there because the weather's bad, and so they can't drop supplies. It's going to be several days into the siege before the air they're able to clear things up enough to where they can drop supplies in. So this is one of the main reasons why medical supplies. You see that whole episode in Bastogne that focuses on Doc Rowe scrounging for supplies, and this is one of the reasons why they lost their hospital.
One of the guys captured here was Major Bill Desabry. Desabry got wounded in a nearby town that day.
If you've ever heard of Team Desabry, they had these combat teams, and he was in command of one of those teams.
A headshot wound, and they put him in an ambulance, gave him anesthetics, and brought him to this field hospital. When he came out of his anesthetics, he woke up in a German truck on its way to Germany as a POW. But, luckily for him, the Germans let him live because he was an officer, which the Germans often did during wartime. After the ambush, a few German soldiers stayed here to guard the field hospital that just was attacked by them. And in the following morning, on the high ground towards the southeast side, elements of the 401st Glider Infantry Regiment attacked this crossroads to take back the field hospital that was attacked previously by the Germans. During the attack, there was a car horn of a truck going constantly off.
And I should mention, if you have never studied these glider infantry units, man, you had to have nerves of steel to be in one of these things. The gliders, their role in airborne attacks was often to go in before the airborne even dropped, right? They had to go in and set the beacons and kind of prepare the area where the airborne troops were going to be. They were kind of the advanced units. And they went in these gliders. They were these basically flying bricks. They didn't have engines or anything. They were just gliders. And so they would be towed by the C-47s, the planes that would also drop airborne infantry. And they would be towed by these cables, and then they would release those, and then they would glide in. Because they didn't have engines, because they were just gliders, they were silent, and so they would go in at night a lot of the times. You couldn't control them. If you were coming in an area where you were going to crash, it was bad. And a lot of times these guys died, either because they landed in the wrong place or because they couldn't control it and they hit trees or hit bad areas. So many things could go wrong. You think the airborne guys were tough. The glider guys were even tougher.
At first, they didn't understand where the sound came from. But when the battle was over, they saw a dead American soldier who got shot laying over a steering wheel, pushing the car horn down in a truck. So the Americans took back the field hospital when all of a sudden about 6 German half-tracks came from the southwest, driving towards the field hospital. And Mike Campana of the 401st walked up with a bazooka. He came down towards the hill and he knocked out the first vehicle. When the first vehicle got destroyed, he then put his aim towards the last vehicle.
Why do you do that? Because if you've got an armored column and you don't have the firepower to take all of them out, you take out the first and the last, and now the rest of them are all stuck.
And knocked that vehicle out as well. He then started to take out every single vehicle in the middle between those two. Mike Capanna got a silver star for this action.
When you talk about military decorations, and there are others in between, but kind of the main ones when we're talking about action on the field, you got the Medal of Honor, you got the Distinguished Service Cross, which guys like Dick Winters got the DSC for his actions at Breakcore Manor, and then you've got the Silver Star, which I think Buck Compton got one, maybe Garnier and a few others for Breakcore Manor. Those are typically kind of the top ones. There are other medals in there as well, but those are the ones you most often hear about for valor.
Well, back to the previous day when the Germans attacked the field hospital, one of the guys who was taken...
So I want to go back and just read that there. In this field behind the Monument Division Clearing Station of the 326th Airborne Medical Company was overrun by enemy forces on the night of December 19th. So this is in the very first days of the Battle of the Bulge, right? This is right about the time Easy Company is just arriving, like the 19th and 20th is when they're arriving in Bastogne. So this is happening very early on. They were sprayed by machine gun fire for 15 minutes and many soldiers killed or wounded. Those who survived the attack became prisoners of war. This is a relatively new monument, it looks like.
Well, back to the previous day when the Germans attacked the field hospital, one of the guys who was taken prisoner by the Germans, who was a nurse, his name was Hank Skowronski. Hank always brought his camera with him, also that day when he was at the field hospital. He took some pictures of the field hospital right before the attack, in which you can see it was clearly an aid station.
Sander, good job on finding these. This is really fascinating stuff.
Marked with the red crosses on the tents. When the 401st counterattacked, the damage sadly was already done here. One of the 401st soldiers, named Carmen Gysi, he was exploring the remains of the field hospital here, and all of a sudden he found a camera on the ground.
Oh.
Because what happened during this ambush, Hank had dropped his camera during the German attack, and Carmen Gysi found it with still 12 pictures inside the camera roll. Carmen took the camera with him and continued taking pictures of him and his comrades during the war. And it was only around 15 years ago when a friend of Reg Jans, the battlefield guide tour.
That's Reg right there. He's so good at this. I mean, if you ever want to go to Bastogne and do a tour, go to his website. I think it's Reg Jans, Regjans is his name, and he's fantastic.
Who told me this story, reunited Carmen Gysi with Hank Skowronski. During that meeting, Carmen gave Hank his camera back.
Oh, that's awesome. So one of the reasons why Reg is so good at this is he knew a lot of these guys, right? He went to the Bois Jacques with Babe Heffron and Bill Garnier, for example. And so he could show us the exact spot where Garnier and Toy lost their legs. And you know, he knows all of this stuff because he heard those firsthand stories.
This whole German attack on the field hospital was a big setback for the Americans during the Battle of the Bulge. When you read books and testimonies about this place, it is usually referred to as Crossroads X, the field hospital that was overrun and the executions that had taken place here on the first day. So sadly, these type of events also happens during war, and it still does, even today.
Yeah.
Even such sad stories needs to be told and taught to people and learned by people. And I'm so glad that Reg Jans told me this story while I was on the battlefield tour of him, so I could share this topic and this video with you guys. So I want to thank you guys for watching. I really appreciate you guys watching, and I want to thank Reg Jans for his battlefield tour where he told me this story. So please check.
He's speaking with his typical Dutch accent, right? Yeah, it sounds we don't even make in English, but it's Reg is how we would say it in English.
His website out, that's regjans.com. And I also have a Patreon, so if you want to support my channel, you can do that there. I'll put the link in the description of my Patreon in there. And yeah, I'm standing here on the field, and we'll close the video with this sad place. I'll see you guys in the next episode.
All right, good stuff. Sander, thank you for sharing that story with us. Like I said, guys, I really want to encourage you to check out his stuff. Let's get him some subscribers. Let's use the power of our community to promote fantastic history content. And I love what Sander does, and I hope he keeps on doing it. I'm going to be with him in Normandy in just a couple of weeks, so you can be watching for some content of us together, I'm sure. Thanks for watching.